we'll go on with our lesson. Thank you. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mom. All right. So, for some reason, I'm discombobulated today, and I'm not going to give that any power or place in my consciousness, but something's working sideways in me today. All right. I'm learning Spanish, and I have a CD in my car, and I have a book that I love, so I Xerox the pages of the book and put them in my car, so when I'm at stoplights, if I hear the tape and I can't exactly get the enunciation of the word correctly, then I have that chapter in my car. I'm learning mantequilla de afeitar, shaving, electric razors and shaving. That's the lesson I'm on. It's so funny, la mantequilla de afeitar. Okay, whatever. So here's what the humor is today. I bought one of those tapes to teach you Spanish, that teach you Spanish in your sleep. And during the night, the tape skipped. So now I only stutter in Spanish. And then lastly, after hearing a sermon on Psalm 52, verses 3 and 4, that's all about lies and deceit, a man wrote to the IRS, and he says, I can't sleep knowing that I have cheated on my income tax. So enclosed is a check for $150, and if I still can't sleep, I'll send you the rest. All right, a little humor to get started this morning. So we're talking about Moses, and I love that hand under creating a bridge, supporting crossing the Red Sea. Have you ever reached the end of your rope? The end of your rope where you bumped up against a situation that seemed impossible with no answer and no way out. I feel we've all reached the edge sometimes of all that our hearts can take, our minds can take, our relationships can take, our capabilities, and we feel we can't go on, we can't try any harder, we can't work anymore, we can't figure a way out. There's a metaphysical, spiritual principle that provides out of darkness there will always come a solution that will lead to a higher level of living and being. And I think first that's a higher level of being inside of us that then lives to a better way of living. It's so imperative that we appreciate this idea. Divine mind in the universal Christ consciousness does not know impossibility at all. Spirit always works to reveal right answers, right outcomes, to guide us to the solutions that best serve us, whatever is needed, and we can learn to trust it over and over and over, little steps at a time. You know, you trust it because of this and it works out. You trust it because of that and it works out. I first wrote this message in 2008. Yes, I'm going back to old sermons. 24 years in ministry times 40 sermons a year is like 800 sermons in my computer. So if I repeat, you're hearing it from a different place in consciousness anyway, right? So it'll sound new. I wrote it the first time in 2008 when we were in the midst of the most severe worldwide economic crisis since the Great Depression in 1929. And it just looked like everything was going down the tube. So where are we today? In the greatest economy in the history of our nation almost. Everything is on the upswing. I want to repeat, divine mind, the universal Christ consciousness does not know impossibility. It only knows wholeness. It only knows wellness. And we have to get aligned with it in order for that to flow in and through us and out from us, individually, collectively, as a consciousness here in our church, our community, and our nation. In the same way, if you find yourself standing on the edge of a seemingly impossible situation, I know it helps me remember that I've been there before, and I survived it. I got out of it, right? Seemingly impossible situation, or maybe we'll read in a little bit, you're standing on the threshold of a new beginning or a new life or something new after a divorce, after a loss of a job, after a change in a job, and you're standing on a threshold not ready yet to step across it because it's uncertain and it's unknown and you have some apprehension. But the idea that out of the darkness there will always come a solution that will lead to a higher level of living and being, you can trust. You can trust that you are in the omnipresence of spirit and that you are being guided, and that you will be guided to successful outcomes. You're way ahead of me on the slides there, Jesse. So you're not, as we think about it, you're not at a point of devastation, failure, not at a point of loss or uncertainty or apprehension. You're not at a point of breakdown. You're at a point of breakthrough. And so we're beginning a series. I'm beginning a series just for a few weeks in summer, and I'm calling it, that's not the one. Anyway, I'm calling it the guys of the Old. We're going to look at the guys in the Old Testament. And we're going to learn how to build a consciousness that can meet and successfully overcome big challenges. There's so much, a new thought about the old guys. 6 ways to build consciousness to overcome big challenges. Everybody in the Bible, all the characters in the Bible are aspects of our consciousness, and they're working through different kinds of problems. And so if we study what they did as aspects of our own consciousness, that will help us grow to meet big challenges. We're going to meet Elijah and learn about persistence in prayer. We're going to meet Elijah and his process for manifestation. Noah is going to show us how to not freak out when we're flooded with problems, right? David's wisdom and courage in meeting giant problems like Goliath. Joel's opening to divine restoration after loss and devastation. So if you want to strengthen your consciousness with victory and success and great outcomes and new life, plan to be here. Next week is Humor Sunday, so we'll skip the Old Testament guys, but then we'll go on with them after that. So today we meet Moses. His story is in Exodus chapter 3, beginning, Exodus 3, beginning in verse, I might not have this right, 14 anyway, you can Google it. You know the story. Moses goes to Pharaoh and asks him to free the Israelites from slavery. And Pharaoh just says, no way. So then the Lord sends plagues, we're told. Really, first gentle, not that there's ever a gentle plague, but easy plagues, and frogs, flies, then the diseased cattle, then people get boils, then the locusts come, and it's the 10th plague that is the death of the firstborn child that sent Egypt into devastation, and Pharaoh was forced to let the Israelites go. Every time there was a plague, the Lord is forcing me to do this, he would agree to let the Israelites go. And when the plague subsided, he drew them back and kept them in slavery. The Israelites, when they were finally freed, left happily. But as you know the story with Charlton Heston, right? Is that the one? Yeah, we're out to the Red. They get out to the Red Sea and they look back and Pharaoh's armies are charging after them and they can't pass, they're stuck at the Red Sea. And so they start moaning and whining to Moses, saying, did you bring us out here to die? It would have been better if we were in slavery in Egypt because at least we were alive. Now this is a devastating experience. When they were unable to cross the sea, they felt trapped. They accused Moses, leading them there to die. Now Moses, metaphysically, represents spiritual law. He's the lawgiver. 10 Commandments, right? He creates and works with spiritual law. The law that out of darkness there will always come a solution that will lead to a higher level of living and being. And so he gave the Israelites this really powerful spiritual practice. And you remember from the movie, if you saw it, years ago, when they were standing at the Red Sea, he lifts up his staff, and there's his words, fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of it's Jehovah, which he will work for you this day. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you must hold your peace, or be still and know, right? Fear not. It's a 3-pronged spiritual practice. Fear not, stand still, and see the saving grace that's available for you in your life. You don't have to arm wrestle God to get things to work out or to have an answer to your prayer. Fear not, stand still and see, believe, trust, whatever that takes in you. Metaphysically, we'll just rewind this for a minute. When I sent Mike the slide to put on social media, I thought, I'm not sure I want this on social media, that Egypt represents low consciousness. Oops, I hope there aren't any Egyptians here. It's only characteristically, metaphysically, in Scripture, Egypt represents lower consciousness. Always go down into Egypt in Scripture. And Pharaoh is the ruler, the king of lower consciousness. He is the ego, and not all ego is bad. I know the Course in Miracles teaches, oh, get rid of all your ego, but we need ego to navigate our lives. But Pharaoh is the ruler of lower consciousness, meaning the Egyptians are I call them our negative thought people. They're fear, frustration, desperation, sadness, anger, all of that. And they, let's see, what do I have here? They're negative thought people that live in lower consciousness. And they follow us, right? Once there's a habit there that we're living in Egypt and we're living in all this regret and disappointment and sense of loss or frustration or whatever it is. The children of Israel, and they're referred to children because they're positive thought people in us, but they're still developing. They're children. They're not full grown into full consciousness in us. They're developing positive thoughts in us. They're inspiration. They're hope for a better way of life. They're all of that. The positive thought people developing and growing up in us, aspiring parts like hope and faith. And when we've let Pharaoh rule in us for a long time, and we've let the human intellect dominate us and not given spirit in those times of being still and listening within, if we haven't given spirit ruling power in us, but we've given ruling power to Pharaoh, it can be hard to break up that consciousness. It can be hard to step out of lower consciousness, to cross that threshold. Elizabeth Sand Turner, one of Unity's authors, and also one of the founders of Unity of Nashville, she, in her book, Let There Be Light, she said, there comes a time when you make your escape from living in lower consciousness, right? We've all made that turn. I'm going to go to the gym every week or every day. I'm going to write the book. I'm going to, we just get out of that place where we're stuck. There comes a time when you make your escape from living in lower consciousness. You desire to be born into the spirit, but you cannot rise out of the flesh, right? Spirit, you can't rise out of the human ways. Something binds you down like a hot air balloon. You are tugging at the guy wires that hold you to earth. If you are bound by worldly phenomena, facts, habits, diagnosis, addictions, appearances, fears, the cords that hold you are states of consciousness that can and must be dissolved, right? So when you're living in lower consciousness, you're living in negative conditions, and it's kind of a way of life, that frustration that's so overwhelming or whatever it is, you create out of that consciousness. So you create plagues. You create things that plague you, right? It's a law that you reap the results of your consciousness, and if you're living in lower consciousness, in negative thoughts and negative conditions, you will create negative experiences in your life. And sometimes it takes more than one plague to let go or to lift ourselves back up into higher consciousness, doesn't it? More than one plague, 2 plagues, 10 plagues in Egypt before Pharaoh, that ruling human intellect, was going to say, maybe maybe I should let go of this. Maybe I should turn in a new direction, right? Maybe I should let those negative thought people, get rid of them, and let the Israelites, let the good thoughts live in me. When you stand steadfast and focus on what God can do in and through you, you activate spiritual power. 5 essentials: life, love, wisdom, substance. Life, love, power, intelligence, and substance. You activate that when you stand still and open to the saving grace of spirit. You activate an energetic power that can begin to work for you, and it can transcend any limitations or fears or doubts or worries that you're living in. Now, the logical part of you, Pharaoh, may say, it's impossible. It's impossible. But as you listen deeply, fear not. Don't be afraid. Cease that anxious thinking. Stand still. The way ahead will open. The way ahead requires you to remain firm. And then see or look for the saving grace opportunity. For the fear, the doubt, and worry, the apprehension that you're feeling in the moment, in that day, in that experience, you'll never see again. The Lord will fight for you. Spiritual law will work for you. Spiritual law will work for you. So when we find ourselves standing on that threshold, one of my favorite authors, John O'Donohue, in his book, Bless the Space Between Us, he just writes just so beautifully about thresholds. And so I want to share that with you. See if you find yourself here, or you have found yourself in this. And he writes so poetically. It's beautiful. He says, within the grip of winter, it's almost impossible to imagine the spring. Yet beneath the surface of winter, the miracle of spring is already in preparation. The cold is relenting. Seeds are awakening. Then imperceptibly, somewhere, one bud opens, and the symphony of renewal is no longer reversible. So you're standing on the threshold, you're thinking nothing's happening, and yet inside you, in the experience of your life, your consciousness, who you are, the Israelites are stirring hope and faith and belief. He says, we are often surprised by change that seems to arrive out of nowhere. We find ourselves crossing some new threshold we had never anticipated. Like spring, secretly at work within the heart of winter, below the surface of our lives, huge changes are in fermentation. And that's true for every one of us, regardless of your age. Things that you're growing and changing, right? He says to acknowledge and to cross a new threshold is always a challenge. It demands courage and also a sense of trust in whatever is emerging, right? This becomes essential when a threshold opens suddenly in front of you, one for which you had no preparation. This could be illness or suffering or loss. To change is one of the great dreams of every heart. To change the limitations and the sameness, the banality or the pain. So often we look back on patterns of behaviors, the kind of decisions we make repeatedly, the decisions that have failed to serve us well, and we aim for a new and more successful path or way of living. At the same time, you can ask yourself, at which threshold am I now standing? Can you ask yourself that? Are you standing on a threshold right now? You are, probably. At which threshold am I now standing? At this time in my life, what am I leaving? Where am I about to enter? What is preventing me from crossing my next threshold? Threshold is not a simple boundary. It's a frontier that divides two different territories. A real frontier that cannot be crossed without a heart being passionately engaged and woken up. This is one of the reasons such vital crossings were always clothed in ritual. It is wise in your own life to be able to recognize and acknowledge the key thresholds, to take your time, to feel all the varieties of presence that accrue there, to feel all the varieties of presence that accrue there, to listen inward with complete attention until your heart says and you hear the inner voice calling you forward. The time has come to cross. Doesn't he write beautifully? So you're standing on that threshold. Something has been stirring in you that you weren't even aware of. It can appear suddenly. Things happen that cause us to have to change. And then you can be planning. Every New Year, people make goals and dreams and aspirations. They do vision maps and all of that stuff to start in a new direction, something that's new for your life. And I always say here in our lessons, it doesn't have to be a really big thing. You know, it could be you decide to eat less sugar. You're standing on the threshold of a brownie, you know, and piece of cake or something, and you decide, wait, I'm crossing, I'm leaving that behind. You know, it doesn't have to be a big thing, but it's the discipline of consciousness. It's taking the ruling Pharaoh intellect and putting him in the right place. Human intellect is absolutely necessary for our lives, but the reign of spirit is more necessary and more powerful. There's a Red Sea we all face at times. Its border, let's see, where are we now? Yeah, here we are. We all face a Red Sea at times. Its border can be a place where we choose something that will not expand our heart, because we stay there. We don't cross over. We just, you could enter into this whole new way of living and being, but we stand and look. And even though Father O'Donoghue said, take your time, feel the essence, you've got to engage with it passionately, at some point the time will come to cross, right? Our transformation is not about making ourselves wrong for choosing not to step at this time. It's about noticing what we do when we face perceived limitation or uncertainty or insecurity. So what threshold, let me ask you again, what threshold are you standing on in your life right now? And does it feel like a giant impassable or impossible Red Sea? Do you go down into Egypt and say things like, as you're standing on the edge, you say things like, I want to cross this threshold, but I'm afraid. I want to cross this threshold, but it scares me. I don't know where to begin. I don't have enough faith. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough know-how. I want to cross this threshold, but I get so discouraged so easily. I'm going to have to wait until I retire. I want to cross this threshold, but my body has given out on me, and I just don't have the energy and the discipline that I used to. I don't have the strength. I want to cross this threshold, but I'm too tired. I don't want to. I shouldn't have to. I can't. I'm okay with the way things are, right? And so there's those places, that border, where we choose something to stay in, where we choose to stay in place and not step into what's next for our lives. And yet our whole lives we're growing. We're evolving in consciousness. So how you respond when things get difficult, your initial instinct may be one of smallness, limitation, whining and bargaining like the Israelites did. Oh, did you bring me to this place to kill me off? One brownie won't hurt, right? I did bake brownies last night. I guess that's why it's on my mind. Anyway, excuse making, my friend Tammy Keefe says, excuse making is the guardian of stagnation. It will keep you in the same small, limiting choices. And then another author who's a favorite of mine, Dr. Carolyn Leaf, who wrote Switch on Your Brain, The Key to Peak Thinking and Happiness and Health. She says, only mind activity, divine mind, mind as distinguished from brain, divine mind, the omnipresent spirit, only mind activity will change the brain, will change the ruling Pharaoh intellect in us. And when you learn to embrace who you are, you can operate in positive ways. And you'll find there are no roadblocks or impossible Red Seas. And she does all of her work in neuroplasticity, which says the brain is malleable and changeable by how we think. There's also a scripture that I found as a result, I think it was in her book, 1 Corinthians 10, chapter 10, verse 13. When you're standing on that threshold, it's along with the testing, Spirit will provide the way of escape so that you can bear it. So, the Israelites got to the edge of the Red Sea, and it looked like there was no way out, and yet Spirit opened a way. In Proverbs, it says, in all toil there is profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. You have to take the step. You have to cross the threshold. Every Red Sea, every new threshold gives you chances to deepen into the stretch of who you are becoming. It's your opportunity to show yourself your true colors and to dare something new and exciting, to re-engage and spark that flame of passion that's in you. So this week I want to invite you to step across the cosmic border that's in front of you, right? Step across the border of everything you know and watch as the waters will part. And hear that voice inside you that's saying, I have come to bring you into a good land, a promised land, a land of good and plenty, a life flowing with goodness and promise. Fear not, stand still, and see the saving grace of Spirit that's with you always. So it is. So let's take that into a time of prayer and seal that with, as you're standing on your threshold, take a deep breath in and feel all that's stirring in you, all those Israelites, those thoughts of hope and faith and aspiration. The daily word from yesterday was bold. I leave bravado behind and find my boldness in God. I feel after that word, that spiritual word. I find my boldness in God. God in me, as me, through me, with me. Omnipresent Spirit. And as you see yourself standing on the threshold of your life right now, and it may be just stepping into a more comfortable life. It may be stepping into more relaxation and time for recreation, recreation. But it may be something more. It may be coming out of an illness and stepping back into the vitality of your health. It may be a threshold where you let go of worry about a child and trust. The same Spirit that's guiding you is guiding your loved one. I find my boldness in God. I don't always think about God as bold. Do you? I find my boldness in God. Let's affirm it. I find my boldness in God. Let yourself have the courage to step into what's right for the highest good for your life. To step toward the promised land filled with blessing, opportunity, peace. See yourself leaving behind frustration, worry, fear, doubt. Knowing that Moses, as lawgiver, the spiritual law will work for you. And so align your thought with the universal God consciousness. Align with the power and the wisdom, the intelligence, the substance, the peace. And let that stream in and through you. We've activated it with this prayer. So let it stream in through your brain and the neural networks, seeing them working perfectly. Let it stream through your body and see every ache or pain dissolving, every joint adjusting, every skin radiating beauty, every piece of you. Beautiful. See it streaming through your heart. We have the courage to step boldly into your relationships. To speak the words you need to speak. To share the experiences of love, encouragement. And see this same universal God consciousness streaming through every part of your life. all the conditions and situations that need harmonizing are now responding peacefully, joyfully to the support of Spirit. There is a Moses in you that helps you cross that Red Sea. It opens the way. So for a few moments, let yourself be in the silence. We are now in the presence of pure being, immersed in the Holy Spirit of life and love and wisdom. And we let that power and presence work in and through each of us. And take a deep breath in, let it out. I leave bravado behind and find my boldness in God. I leave Pharaoh on his throne and let him reign when human intellect is necessary. But I step with the boldness of God, the assurance of God, the confidence of Spirit. And we turn our attention to our loved ones, our beautiful children here this morning, that we bless with lots of thresholds for their lives, positive steps into a promised life of goodness. Each of you, your children, your loved ones. And again, more and more, our country, our nation. We find our boldness in God. We find our path in God. We find our way, and Spirit makes a way. And so for others, we affirm, you find your boldness in God. Let's affirm it. You find your boldness in God. And we can trust it. Now and forever. And so it is. Gently, gently returning our attention to this time and place. Together we all say, Amen.